Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. There's no Tony Haggerty today, but you do have the pleasure of me, Sean Martin and Alison McConnell. How's it going, Alison?
Not too bad, thank you, Sean. Yourself?
Aye, good, usual, Monday morning. So you'll be at the game for us tonight. So first of all, I'm just wanting to get what your feelings are ahead of it. It's the last tie of the round to be played, the draw afterwards, under the lights at Tannadice.
Yeah, I think it's a big one. I think at this stage now, Celtic want to be winning every game. I think obviously you're coming out of the league. There's not that same pressure, but at the same time, this is a team that have already banked the first trophy of the season. They're going for the league, and this could be it could be a step towards a domestic treble. Obviously, I think at this stage of the season, I'm not sure that will be the consensus within the dressing room, or if it will be a consideration. But I think for any Celtic team, it's about winning games and also sustaining the momentum that they've built up since the turn of the year. Really, I think you don't want to knock that in any way. I think you would want to continue it and ensure that you're taking that kind of form into the league too.
Martin Davies comment here saying, "Morning gang, the day has come for the game. Celtic will face a hard scrap by the odd, but I presume it means win by the odd goal." What do you think about that, Alison? I think it probably is going to be a hard scrap, isn't it?
I would absolutely go with that. I think it will be tight. I think you're maybe looking at if you're going to push me, I'd maybe say a 2-1 for Celtic, but I would agree. I think it will be quite physical. I think it will be a fight. I think it'll be a hard game. I know the last time that Celtic went to Tannadice, I think it was at 3-0. Yep. But Dundee United, I've seen a fair bit of them this season. I've been quite impressed by Tam Courts. I've been quite impressed by the way he set the team up. I think they've got quite a bit of youthfulness about them, a bit of energy about them. I think it's almost, I don't really like the phrase a free hit, but you think it's almost a game where you feel there's nothing to lose. It's a cup tie. It lends itself to being a fairly open game at points, and I think if the more open it is, the more it probably plays into Celtic's hands. But I think Dundee United will try and have a go tonight.
They've also got Charlie Mulgrew, and as Kevin McKenna put in his column earlier on, it's impossible ever to be annoyed at Charlie Mulgrew. No, I mean, when I took a wee look at United, the underlying stats tell me that they've been significantly overperforming in defence, because the chances that they've given up this season, they should actually have conceded the most in the league, but they've actually let in 7 goals fewer than what they should have expected to be conceded, and that gives them the 5th best total. These things don't necessarily even out over the course of one season, so I'm not saying expect them to crumble tonight or anything, just that they've been performing above themselves in defence so far this season. And that 3-0 game aside, I think you've probably saw that against Celtic as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think as well, I like Siegrist as a goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes he's you've seen him when he's been under the cosh, particularly, and maybe haven't been the busier of the two goalkeepers. You see him capable of repelling shots. I think he is a good short stopper. And I think that's important in a game like tonight where, you might need a goalkeeper to play particularly well. I think for Celtic, it's about not getting frustrated if you don't get an early foothold in the game. I think you've seen a tendency from that at times from Celtic. If they don't get an early goal, that they seem to almost run out of ideas a bit. Like they do get a bit frustrated if the goal isn't coming. I think it's just important to keep it going. I think you saw against Livingston last Sunday that they set an immediate tone in the opening stages of the game, and I think they'll probably look to try and replicate that tempo and that energy again.
You and Martin there saying blow United away 4-1. If you're wondering, by the way, those a wee bit. If you're wondering, by the way, those underlying stats I'm talking about, Celtic have conceded 2 goals more than they should have with the chances that they've given up, but still have the kind of the quote unquote best defence, both underlying data and in actuality. So take from that what you will. Get John Curry here pining for Tony's background, but it looks a bit. David Bradley, we're going to go on to this shortly because there's a couple of differences with our predicted lineups, Alison. David Bradley are saying want to see Forrest start, see if he's kicking on now. That's something I think the two of us would agree with. We've both got him in our predicted lineups.
Yeah, I have to say I'm a big James Forrest fan. I think he's one of the most underappreciated Celtic performers. And Sean, I know you and I have spoken about this before, but I think a fit James Forrest definitely brings something to the table. I think he has something to offer. I think he's a creative player. I think he can conjure something out of nothing. I think he's scored some pretty important goals over the course of recent seasons. And I definitely think that there's a place for him to be found if he's fit and on form and on song. And I think you saw a glimpse of that against Livingston last Sunday. I think he probably has done enough to keep his place. And I think when you have options there too, it maybe makes it easier to pick and choose games and being able to rest players, and also just to offer a competitive edge to the squad too, which can be crucial, I think, in keeping the hunger there.
I mean, I wrote after the Livy game, I kind of chose to focus on Forrest and his performance in it. And mostly, I wasn't even really saying it was man of the match. I know he got it on the TV and stuff. I would argue there was probably a couple others that could have got it. I was making the point that in terms of the game and in terms of the individuals and the seasons that they're each having, the Livy game was probably more important for Forrest and more impressive for Forrest in the context of his season so far and the injury troubles and selection issues than it was for some of the other man of the match candidates. And I agree with you and I agree with David Bradley. I think it can be massive even in this run-in, as long as he's fit. That's been the key for the last maybe season and a half. If he's fit, then he can make an impact. At the start of the season when Ange Postecoglou came in, he played him left wing the first few weeks. He missed a couple of big chances, don't get me wrong, but he still had a goal and a couple of assists. And then he was injured, come back, put Celtic into a League Cup final, lest we forget. I think a lot of people do forget. Postecoglou felt it was appropriate to mention that to you. I think it was actually your question, I think, wasn't it? Before the Livy game. And I just think that if he's fit, if nothing else, it adds to the options that he's got at his disposal. Proper quality options to actually come on and or to start and do things. Now, before we move on to our predicted lineups, which are on the website if you want to take a look at the kind of in-depth justifications for why we've picked what we've picked, I wanted to ask Alison, I know it's a quarter final, which is the business end of the campaign and all the rest of it, but do you think there's any chance that any of the younger players get either a start or some game time tonight? Because, I mean, the B team played on Wednesday, thumped Partick Thistle 5-0, and they don't play again until Saturday, which is Rangers at Ibrox. So there are no B team match commitments for the likes of Karamoko, Dembele, Ben Doak, Johnny Kenny, etc., etc. Would you reckon any chance of that?
I'm going to say no. I can't see it. The only way that you would envisage it is if Celtic have a fairly command and lead in the game, and there's maybe an opportunity to bring one or two on. But even then, I'm not sure that they'll make the squad. I think when you get to this stage of the season, I think it's a game that will be taken very seriously. I think it'll be a very strong squad that goes to Tannadice, and I think it'll be a strong bench that's there too. I think at this point, experience also comes into the mix. I think you want players who have maybe been over the course before, and I'm just not sure yet that it would be the right game. I think if any of them make the bench and there's an opportunity for them to come in, it may well present itself, but I would have to say my initial thought would be I don't think that this will be the game for it.
It's probably fair. I mean, I should mention that the B team's 5-0 win over Partick was notable for me anyway, for the influence that the first team kind of fringe players had. Karamoko scored twice, got an assist. Kenny scored, Mikey Johnston scored, and Johnston got an assist as well. Set up one of Karamoko's goals. So whatever you think of the B team experiment, if you want to call it that, and I offer no overall opinion on that today, though I will say go and read Owen Brown's columns on the subject on the website if you're interested. The one thing I will say is that there are some players there who look like they'll be capable of transitioning to the first team, whether or not they get any kind of game time tonight. It's worth keeping an eye out for them in that sense. We're going to go to our predicted lineups now, though, and there are plenty of comments here already on that, including Pete McGee here, which is we're going to start second guessing them now anyway, but that's probably a fair enough comment. First of all, Jason Lee, that is a good shout. I mean, we kind of touched on it on Friday. They've had a week off, although Joe Hart has said it wasn't really a week off. They turned down extra days and stuff like that to kind of carry on training and that kind of thing. How big a role do you think that will play, Alison, before we get to the lineups?
Yeah, I think it can work in two ways, can't it? I think sometimes it can disrupt your momentum when you're playing well. Sometimes it can be a benefit just to keep going. On the other hand, I think there have been very few opportunities to really have a deep session with the players in terms of not just ticking over, but actually working on specifics, and maybe just concentrating on certain areas that maybe need addressed. And I'm thinking, I do still think there is a brittleness at times about the defensive set up when it comes to set pieces. I think, I think it's been notable. I think the last 4 or 5 league goals that Celtic have conceded have all come from set pieces. So I'm sure I'm not the only person that's noticed that. I think it gives you an opportunity to go and work on specifics. But I think you'll know the answer to your question within the first 15 minutes of tonight's game.
Fair enough. I mean, we're going to our lineups, but Rad McCune here, if Forrest starts, Rogic has to start beside him. They have a fantastic understanding. They definitely do. I mean, you've seen that against Livy as well. We've got Paul Scanlon saying Forrest over Abada or Jota, no chance. It is probably an opinion that a lot of people hold, to be honest. The seasons that Abada and Jota have had so far this season. Frank Brennan kind of touching on my point about the B team players. I don't think he will, actually. I just felt it was worth raising that this is probably the only time in the Cup, is probably the only time you would think about putting them in, because the league run-in is the priority, and that's first team, first 11 every chance you get, I would think. Frank just touching on that there with that comment. Craig B here, it's an interesting thing to hypothesise. Ralston at right wing, interchange with Juranovic. I don't think that's going to happen either, but I can see the logic at least. So if we go to our predicted lineups, then I'll first of all give you our actual lineups that we've predicted. So mine is Hart in goal, Juranovic, Carter-Vickers, Welsh, Taylor, Beaton, McGregor, Rogic, Forrest, Maeda and Jota. Alison, yours is Hart, Juranovic, Carter-Vickers, Starfelt, Taylor, McGregor, Rogic, O'Reilly, Forrest, Maeda, Jota. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, the 2 differences there that stick out. I've gone for the probably incorrect second guessing of Ange's rotation with Stephen Welsh playing over Carl Starfelt, based on the logic that he's played every minute of both Scottish Cup ties so far this season. That said, so have Anthony Ralston and Liam Scales, and I've left them out, so I'm not entirely sure my own logic works on that one. But you think he'll go with the entirety of his first choice back four, though, aye?
I do. I think you made a comment last week where he was talking about consistency of selection and how important it is for partnerships to develop and trying to keep the two of them playing together. I don't think he'll deviate from it tonight, but I stand to be corrected.
Well, okay, right. The other one we've differed on is the midfield, specifically the pivot and where Callum McGregor will play. I've been on record plenty this season saying I do think having him as the deepest midfielder is the key a lot of the time. But after the Livy game, I've gone with Beaton to stay in there and McGregor to play that wee bit further forward. You reckon McGregor deepest with the kind of dual threat of Rogic and O'Reilly ahead of him, yeah?
Yeah, I thought O'Reilly offered something when he came off the bench against Livingston last Sunday. I thought he made a very strong impression. I thought he was unlucky not to score. I thought he set up a couple of chances. I think you see that he offers an attacking threat. I would take your point about Beaton. I thought he played particularly well against Livingston. In actual fact, I thought Beaton was probably man of the match. Last Sunday, I thought he really controlled and was very dominant in that midfield area. And I think it's somewhat harsh to leave him out. But I think for tonight's game, it's a cup game, and you're really going and trying to get the win and get through over the course of the 90 minutes. I think maybe O'Reilly just gives you more in an attacking sense.
Rab McCune there, Welsh, your Bern been keeping you up, Sean. She kind of had a wee screaming match. I don't know if you could hear it in the background when I named my starting 11, so she obviously disagrees as well. No, I mean I can see the logic. David Bradley's coming in with a comment here. Alison, what do you think? I mean, we've just not seen Julien really. I'm not convinced that he will get a start, even though I've taken Ange to kind of rotate out one of his centre backs. I don't know if I'm beginning to think we're not going to see Julien this season at all, really. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. We spoke to Ange Postecoglou about it I can't remember if it was Friday or last Friday, and he'd kind of said, he has to wait for his chance now. He's back training, but he has to wait for his chance. The guys that run in front of him, I've done the business all weekend, all season, and essentially he's in the same position as others that are now in trying to make an impression and get in. And I kind of thought he hinted at the point that you might see him sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's a fairly intriguing one because he's obviously had so little game time. He's missed now 15 months of a season other than that appearance in the Cup against Raith Rovers. He's clearly not match fit. I know like you may be physically fit and fit enough to train, but there's a difference between match fit. And I think when the league is so tight, I think there's maybe a fear about putting someone in who's not fully up to speed just because you have no margin for error when it gets to this point of the season. So I think very much it might depend on how the campaign plays out over the next few weeks, whether or not you see him come back in again. Interestingly, I also thought that he may make the bench tonight because if you are in a position where the game is maybe more comfortable than you might anticipate, then it might be an opportunity to bring players on for game time. And I say that well, without any disrespect to Dundee United, because I actually think it'll be a very tight game this evening.
On the subject of like fitness and maybe people getting, I know it's not jadedness when it's Julian because he's not played enough to be jaded really, but it's sticking in my mind that Australia have got 2 internationals coming up relatively soon, and we kind of had a brief moment after Rogic came back from his last international break where it wasn't necessarily peak Rogic, and people were suggesting maybe the travel and the commitments that he's got with Australia had something to do with it. Is there any chance that that's already playing on Ange Postecoglou's mind? He talks about players going on international duty all the time. Seems like he couldn't be prouder for them to do it. So it is obviously something that he considers, but does it really chime with you that there would be something in his head now saying maybe not limit his minutes, but certainly give him a chance to not have to play full games in the run-up to going away for 2 games with Australia, which I think are like, well, no matter where they are, they're the other side of the world, but I think it's in Australia and then it's in Saudi Arabia, which is probably Qatar it's going to be in. But
yeah, I think it might be a consideration. However, I think all the indications that you've had from Ange Postecoglou is during the season you work, you get your head down, you work. It's fairly relentless. You get a holiday when everyone gets a holiday at the end of the season, and that's just the way it is. And you just cope with these things, and you have a schedule of or a timetable rather during your travelling and when you're away that you stick to in order that you can maybe just pick up where you're leaving off to facilitate transitions across time zones and try and minimise jet lag and stuff. So I think it might be a consideration. However, I think the impression that you've had from him is very much like, you're here to work and that's what you do. And if we need you, you're going to play. And I say that whilst being thinking about what he'd said when Rogic came back after the last trip, and I think he was asked, would you be tempted to give him a few days off? And he said, no, you get a holiday when everyone gets a holiday. So I think, well, that there will be planning for the next block of games and planning for what's coming up. I think the view will very much be, you're here to do a job.
Charlie McGarvey making a point here that he doesn't like O'Reilly and Rogic both playing together. I predicted them to both start together against Livy because I thought he would go with the rationale that they would be playing most of the game, if not all the game, in Livy's half and wouldn't necessarily need them to be doing a lot of the defensive work. I think it's probably unfair to say they don't win the ball back. That both of them actually statistically do pretty well for kind of winning back possession and playing their role in the press and all that. I would probably agree, Charlie, that most of the time I wouldn't want them to start together. I think I would pick one of the two of them and kind of make a piece with that, and the other one to come off the bench as they did against Livy, to be honest. I mean, I agree with you, Alison. I thought O'Reilly, even though he was only on for 15-16 minutes, he created 2 chances, and in those 15-16 minutes he made a nuisance of himself, which is all you can really ask for if that's the kind of cameo you're getting. But overall, I think I agree with Charlie. I don't think I would want the two of them to start necessarily together. If you move further forward, I think we've both got the same front three. We both agree, as we've mentioned, that Forrest keeps his place, as do Jota and Maeda. That leaves a bench though with plenty of options. Even if some of the younger guys are included, you've still got Leo Labada there. You've got Georgios Giacomakis. You've got Rayo Hatate. It's decent, is it not?
Yeah, I think it will be a very strong squad. I think it'll be a strong starting lineup, and I think it'll be a strong bench. And I think since January, the difference now is that Celtic can look to a bench that has game changers on it. I think the likes of Hatate and Giacomakis can come on and influence a game very quickly. and make their mark on it quickly. And I think that's maybe where they differ from the opening months of the campaign.
Okay, though. I think before we wrap it up, I just want to remind you all that if you enjoy this, you'll probably enjoy the website as well. So if you go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, give us a go. That'll be your good deed done for the day, and you'll help keep my daughter in nappies as well. So it's a win-win-win. But yeah, thanks for your contribution today, Alison, and as always, thanks for your comments, guys. Enjoy the game tonight, hopefully, and we'll see you all again tomorrow.